what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Ask any person over the age of 65, and they'll tell you they're losing muscle mass and strength very quickly. In fact, adults can lose 3 to 8% of their muscle mass every decade after the age of 30. You heard it right. That's the age of 30, very youthful, and the body is already starting to decline. That's why today's conversation will address the body's progression as we age and how caregivers can help their aging parents and other loved ones stay fit well into their senior years. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I used to think healthcare was all the same until I discovered PACE at Senior TLC. Now I can come to a place to stay active, see the doctor, or just enjoy a meal with my friends. Plus, having a team of people that help me make sense of my options gives me the support I need to stay in charge of my own health. It's been life-changing.
With PACE at Senior TLC, we offer a unique lineup of personalized care and a caring staff that feels like family, all under one roof. Call today and find out how you can experience a different kind of care.
Welcome. I'm your host, Karen Summey, with ACAPcommunity and an active family caregiver. We're delighted you're with us today. Today, we're talking about the intersection of the aging body with its associated muscle loss and strength, and how movement and nutrition can slow that progression. My guests today are Ms. Meg Picklesheimer, a registered dietitian, and Mr. Jason White, a physical therapy assistant. Both Ms. Picklesheimer and Mr. White come to us from Senior TLC. As you just heard, Senior TLC is our ongoing podcast sponsor, and we certainly want to thank them for their continued support. Meg, Jason, welcome to the ACAP Caregiver Community Podcast. We so appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Okay, for those of you who are regular listeners of our monthly podcast, you may recall that last month we talked about mobility devices for those who have already experienced the rather devastating effects of a decline in their movements. This month, we want to focus on prevention. Let's start with the basics. What changes put individuals at risk for losing mobility and independence as they age? Jason?
Okay. Thank you, Karen. So the loss of lean muscle mass is an issue. As we age, we tend to gravitate toward decreasing our strength, balance, and endurance with the natural aging process. It does increase our risk for falls and slower recovery from injuries. And then, just to repeat the statistic you've already noted today, that adults can lose between 3 and 8% of their muscle mass per decade starting at age 30.
It's unbelievable.
It is.
It really is. Meg?
So for nutrition, a lot of changes in your appetite and metabolism become very apparent as we age, and so usually around 60 to 70 years old is when we really start to see the metabolism slow, and so this could be from their digestion. They can have a decreased sensory input, so the smell and the taste starts to kind of go away a little bit. So sometimes you'll see a lot of the older population just immediately salt their food, and that's because that taste is going, and that's something that I see even with my grandparents that they do. And usually they have an increased risk of malnutrition. So even though they may appear to eat normal foods, they could be having dental issues that are going on that could be causing pain or difficulty chewing or even swallowing. Social isolation. So as we get older, we don't want to go out as much. And so then we're staying inside and becoming more isolated in with ourselves. And that can make them not want to eat as much. So that's something else that goes into it. And then financial restraints. As we know, it is getting very expensive to buy food, especially healthy food. And so we're seeing a lot more choose the processed, the quick meals, and those aren't as healthy. And so that kind of goes along into that as well. And then just reduce protein. Again, protein is becoming more and more expensive. And so with us eating less protein as we age, it affects our muscle maintenance. And so usually without protein, it helps speeds up muscle loss, and it ages the aging muscles become less effective at using protein to repair themselves.
So we can see how closely physical strength and nutrition are connected. Are these changes inevitable, or can they be slowed down or even prevented?
That's a great question. So I'll address that from a physical standpoint. There are key modifiable factors that we can look at in our individual lives. One being strength training, the other one being balance work, and both of those come down to one common denominator, which is regular movement. Sometimes you hear of people retiring or giving up a volunteer position or something of that sort in their older age, and then they kind of just stop. And I've heard...
It's easy to do.
It is. And, when you were talking about the salt thing, I find myself doing that. So I don't know what's happening to me. But I will say that the key ingredient here to prevention is movement from a physical standpoint, because movement is life. When we stop moving, we stop living. Right. And so there used to be that cliche, use it or lose it. It's so true, though. And when it comes to muscle mass, when it comes to your mobility, when it comes to being able to do the things that you want to do and be engaged in your community with, we can't just stop. We may can modify. We may can slow down. We may can readjust. But definitely, to answer your question, as things do slow down, inevitably, a lot of the fallacies that come along with losing some of that capability can be curbed or even prevented. Something else that I'll probably address a little bit more later, and something that may not be thought about too much. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you if you're on any medications. However...
That's easy. Yes.
Okay. If you think about who's on, in general, the most amount of medication, our brains automatically default to geriatrics.
Right.
And that is because it's true. So we really try at Senior TLC, our providers are really attempting to be a minimalist approach with their medications for our participants, because we find that a lot of these medications do contribute to some of these increased muscle mass loss. A lot of these medications decrease a person's ability to maintain their balance. Their nutrition is affected. Absorption of certain nutrients are restricted or lessened. And the list can just go on, and it seems like before you know it, you're taking 12 medications twice a day.
Right.
So I just wanted to mention that, since you asked, can it be prevented? Can you stop taking everything? No, and I'm not advocating for that. But I'm saying, ask questions. When you go to the doctor and he wants or she wants to put you on this, that, or the other, they should be looking at a whole, complete ideology of what kind of medications you're on and considering some of these factors instead of just being isolated on one problem for that medication.
Right. And since you brought that up, 2 months ago, our topic for our podcast was deprescribing medications. And so it seems like a perfect segue between the last 2 months and today. And so what I think I'm going to do is just put some links at the end of this video so that people can check back on those other two as well, because I think they're going to find a lot of synergy among these topics. So thank you for that. Meg, how about you? Can we prevent all these crazy changes or slow them down?
So there are definitely some things we can do nutritionally to help them be slowed. Again, we just want to prioritize our protein intake. That's such a big factor of when we get our plate, and let's say we're looking at a well-balanced plate of a protein, starch, and a vegetable. Normally, everyone's going to want to start with their starch because that seems to be like the most delicious item, macaroni and cheese versus grilled chicken, and or maybe some broccoli. But we really want to try to do the chicken first because that's going to give us the most protein to help our muscles and to help keep what muscle mass that we have. And once that gets us full, then we really want to kind of move on to our vegetables, because those have all of our vitamins and minerals.
Yes.
And so they are so rich of things that are good for our body. And then if we're still hungry and we're not full yet, you have that starch. So I always try to say, keep your starch last, or as I like to say, save your favorite for last.
Yes.
That's what I do. And so that way, if
Right.
I'm still hungry, but I know I'm not going to eat all of it, I can kind of let myself indulge a little bit, but not overindulge, so then I'll feel guilty later. So it's kind of best of both worlds of balance in the sense for a diet. But other things that help maintain our muscle and bone health is vitamin D and calcium. A lot of people think they need to be on supplements. And again, that's something that we'll probably get into a little bit later on. But that's not necessarily true. So I'm looking forward to kind of diving into that in a few more questions.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad you brought up the bone health, because a question for either or both of you. We've talked a little bit about losing muscle mass as we age, but what about our bones? Can a person have a strong muscle mass and a weaker skeleton, or do they both go together? How does that work? Can you have one without the other, and what's the relationship there?
You want me to
Go for it.
So we have a committee at Senior TLC that's our Falls Committee, and recently we've kind of looked at nutritionally, are they on any supplementation? Have they been getting counseling for vitamin D, calcium, things like that? Do they have osteoporosis? Things that may lead to weaker bones. And so something that we've seen for managing osteoporosis is that vitamin D is essential to do that, as it enables the calcium absorption for our body to maintain bone density and strength, which will then prevent those fractures. So if we fall, we may not be breaking any bones. We may just be getting some really bad bruises. But that's a huge improvement from possibly fracturing a leg or a wrist or anything like that. And so some ways that we can get those without supplementation, because really a supplement in terms of a pill for dairy or calcium or things like that is just if we're not eating enough. We should be able to eat enough to meet our body's needs. And so some things that are good sources of calcium is obviously dairy. It could be cottage cheese, it could be milk, it could be yogurt, even dark leafy green vegetables. So think of kale, broccoli, spinach. All of those are really good sources of calcium, and they have so many other vitamins and minerals as well that will just be really beneficial to the body.
Right. And one thing I know from experience is that we need to be monitoring these things with physicians and knowing where our vitamin levels are and that sort of thing, because I found out personally that you can get too much vitamin D, even though it was prescribed by my physician. I hit the top of the range. She said, okay, it's time to back off this vitamin D a little bit because we're getting too much now. So just make sure that we're, consulting our medical team about what we're doing with that, and not just think we can kind of take care of it ourselves. It doesn't work out that way all the time. Yes, absolutely.
So just to add just a little bit to your follow-up question, the sun is a great resource.
Yes.
Not only for some of those vitamins, but also just your overall mood and personality. Just understand, too, there are a lot of free resources that God's given us that we can tap into and take advantage of. But from a strength standpoint and thinking about osteoporosis or bone health, there's definitely a lot of research that shows strengthening, in general strengthening, that is going to help contribute to your bone health, because you're asking your body to do more and it's requiring more nutrients to be a stabilizing factor in your structure. It all kind of works together just for the best if you, again, stay active, stay moving. Circulation increases the more you move. You have natural detoxification of releasing, toxins in your body. With movement, your body's filtering that out. It's not sitting there. If you're sedentary, it just
Interesting.
sits there. Yeah. So just to add that to the last part of your question.
Wonderful. Well, this is all encouraging because there are a lot of things that we can control. So it's not inevitable that we're just going to have this terrible breakdown as we age. And so that's good news for everyone. So what are some of the red flags or the warning signs that caregivers should look for as their aging parents and loved ones are, going through life's journey?
That is a great question. I'll tackle this first just to discuss the elephant in the room when it comes to aging, and that's the fear of falling. The actual fear of falling can contribute to your increased falls.
Yes.
When you've had a fall, statistically, you increase this fear of falling, and so it becomes a cycle. If you're noticing this in your loved ones, that they're reaching for things more spontaneously, they're lessening their step length. You may notice, what are you waiting on, Mom? It's taking you so long. They're being more intentional about their steps because of their increased fear of falling. Maybe they've had a few falls. Maybe they hadn't told you about it. So I think that some of the signs would be obvious. And if I can share, I did several interviews to prepare for this. If I can share just a little bit of that story. One couple that I interviewed, a husband and a wife, who are active in a gym membership where I go. I was graciously given permission to interview them, and the husband is in pretty good shape, even though he's in his mid-80s. Actually, I think he could probably outdo me on the bike.
Wow,
But
that's great.
yeah, so his wife has a little bit more trouble with her physical condition. Very petite lady, sweet as apple pie. But he started noticing that she was taking more time to get places, and that she was taking less steps in shorter increments. And so they worked with their trainer at the gym, who immediately identified that she's having increased fear of falling. She's doing more, even though she's exercising, she's not doing the right one. We need to adapt and adjust. So he was able to work with her and get her more on a walking regimen. And I myself, because I go there, have seen such a difference in her ability to walk and her step length and all these things I noticed as being in the field of physical therapy. I've noticed the improvement over the past 2 or 3 weeks. So having the right resources, I think, is so important. But he noticed this. He knew who to go to find maybe a solution. And so far, it is helping. And she hasn't had any falls, he reported. So
That's great.
Just being intentionally aware of some changes that may be occurring, things like stairs, getting up from a chair, those things that are, if you see are becoming more difficult than, or recovery time from surgery or an injury, those things would be a red flag.
Right. Okay. That's all great information. Meg, how about you?
Yes, so some of the things that we can see signs of would be unintentional weight loss, reduced appetite or skipping meals, or even just signs of malnutrition. So this could be fatigue or weakness or muscle loss. There's something called an NFPE, which is a nutrition-focused physical exam, which I can just do one from looking at someone passing me in the street, and I can see the signs of if they have malnutrition, and it can just look at orbital or temporal wasting or really exposed collarbones and things like that. And so there are physical signs that you can look for. When I used to work in the hospital, I'd have to do a full body assessment and diagnose that way. But typically, if they're not eating as much or skipping meals, or if they're just sleeping all the time, or even if they're sleeping all the time but still going on about how tired they are, those are some very normal signs as well.
Okay. Well, it sounds like catching these early can make a really big difference to folks. So let's talk about what caregivers and older adults can actually do at home. Jason, you want to start?
Absolutely. Know your current level. You can't move forward until you know where you're at. So this may not be as noticeable even to you, these signs that I even described earlier, because it's a slow onset. Definitely seek out, if you're noticing these things, seek out professional evaluations. But knowing where you're at is so important because you have to start somewhere. Even if you are doing well, you can always do better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So finding the right routine that you can build movement into in your life, because I will say it really needs to become a habit. It really needs to hit that 3-4 week mark before you will actually be continuously motivated to do that activity. Mm-hmm. And then finding that this is now a lifestyle change for you because you're reaping the benefits, you're seeing the positive changes, and realizing that there's no quick fix. It's going to take work. Anything good in life, no matter what it is
Exactly right.
hard work to get and hard work to maintain. So just understanding that on the onset and knowing also that it's doable. You don't have to be an Olympic athlete to stay in shape. You have to start somewhere. You gradually build up. The gentleman that I mentioned earlier, he started after he had triple bypass surgery, he started his routine.
Right.
Knowing and realizing, oh, there's a problem and I've got to do something better. He's done that since 2011. Another person I interviewed started in 2009 because they just, saw that, they had retired and they needed to start something that was going to help them and make them feel better and be preventative, be proactive in their health. You need to explore local community resources. There's a ton. If you just Google silver sneakers in my area or silver sneakers near me. So knowing that there are resources, knowing how to find them, and reaching out to people that may know, and then obviously just taking ownership of your wellness. The only, who's responsible for you? You.
Right.
No one's you may have encouragers, but you ultimately have to make those decisions to make those changes. And take small steps to get there.
Meg, how about you? What can we do at home?
We really just want to keep meals simple. We are not asking anyone to make Michelin star meals. It can just be as simple as cutting up some chicken sausage and vegetables and throwing them on a sheet pan and cooking them in the oven and cook it with some quinoa or couscous or whole grain rice, anything like that to get a balanced plate. It could be a peanut butter and jelly. That's if you do it on some whole wheat bread, that would give you some fiber and some vitamins through that. And then the peanut butter will have some protein, and then our jelly can be our fruit with the carbohydrates and sugar. So that would all kind of be well-rounded. It doesn't have to be anything crazy or extravagant. We really just want to focus on protein-rich foods throughout the day. So do not go so hard on one meal that your other meals look kind of wimpy. We kind of want to have it balanced throughout the day. So for instance, they've recently changed the guidelines on the grams of protein recommended. But so say we want to convert our pounds to kilograms to calculate how many grams of protein we need to eat a day. So what you would do is take your weight and divide it by 2.2. And that gives your weight in kilograms. So for a 110-pound person, they would weigh 50 kilograms. The old recommendation used to be 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram, which would mean a person weighing 110 pounds would need to eat 40 to 50 grams of protein a day. This has now changed for the older population. It is now more like 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram because of the risk of falling and our bones getting a little bit more weaker and things like that. It just kind of helps them maintain where they are or keep their bones good and strong. So that's a simple calculation of what you can do. Some really good protein sources is you want to look into Greek yogurt compared to regular yogurt. That's going to be a little bit higher in protein. A string cheese is a really simple on the go. I think I just bought a string cheese that's 5 or 6 grams of protein just in the small amount that it is. And I think it's it's like 50 calories.
Wow.
So I like that one. A hard-boiled egg, that's easily a really good source of protein. You can kind of put whatever seasonings you want on it, or if you want to make it egg salad, that is totally fine. You could do cottage cheese. Now they make the really simple flip that you can flip a fruit into it to add it some flavor. That's a really good on the go, or even beans, tofu, things like that. There's a hummus. That's a really good on the go. If you've never tried dessert hummus, I would really try it.
Now, one question that I have is, what are the differences between proteins when you talk about cholesterol versus non-cholesterol? Because a lot of people are watching cholesterol. So how do you get protein without the cholesterol?
So you really want to watch the fried. So the fried foods are really going to raise our cholesterol levels. So like the lean protein, so maybe look into fish or chicken or turkey, not fried chicken or country fried steak, nothing like that. No hot dogs, no deli. But deli meats are not great for you. They really raise your cholesterol, and they have so much sodium. So if you have heart failure, they could cause fluid retention. There's a lot of things that could go into it. So we really want to try, if you could do a rotisserie chicken and shred it yourself, or I just bought some pre-shredded rotisserie chicken because I didn't want to mess with it. I kind of cheated the system.
Good for you.
But that's a really easy way to kind of bypass that, and you could still make a sandwich with it or a wrap. That's a really good option. But just keep things easy and accessible and use the resources that you have. A lot of insurances will provide counseling or visits with the dietitian, and so try it for 1 or 2 appointments and just see what recommendations, because they are individualized to where they will look at you, listen to what goals that you want to achieve, and will give you great ideas and maybe even help you set up a meal plan.
Great. All right. Well, I like that idea about easy and accessible and appealing, because as we age, we do not want to be standing over a stove as much. We're tired of all that. So we've talked about supplements a little bit. Does everybody need a supplement? How do we work with that?
Not necessarily. We want to do food first. And again, supplements may help in certain cases, but they should be individualized. So not everyone needs one. You may be able to meet your needs through food. It's just looking at everything. So there's 2 different types of supplements. So we can look into the pill form that may be that calcium, iron, things like that. But again, a lot of that we can have through our meats and our vegetables and our fruits. A lot of that can help reach that amount. But then in terms of like the oral nutrition supplements, you may hear people talk about Boost, Ensure, Glucerna, things like that. That's typically for if we're having unintentional weight loss, we have a wound, maybe we're not drinking very much, or just, there's a lot of outside factors going on and we just need a little boost. It is meant to be a supplement, not a meal replacement.
Right. And what about protein powders? A lot of people use protein powders. What's your thoughts about those?
So let's say your protein goal for the day is 120 grams of protein. That is a lot. If you need to use a scoop of protein powder that's going to give you 30 grams of protein, that is totally fine. I would rather you put it in a smoothie to get some fresh fruits in there, and maybe throw in a handful of spinach to get that calcium and the vitamin K and things. But I'm not opposed to it. But again, a lot of these things should only be used for a limited amount of time until we feel like we can meet things on our own again.
Right.
It's just like a little stepping stool to a little boost.
Great. All right. All excellent information. Let's talk about a little bit about the typical week for a senior adult. What does that actually look like in your estimation? What do you see as a typical week?
Great question. So I'll start with the good. some activity to start with, establish routines. Something that we haven't talked about yet, the social interaction you get when you become active in some level of community exercise involvement. We live just down the road from where we're doing this podcast, and it's close to a downtown area, and we do a lot of walking. We see a lot of dog walkers. We see a lot of people just walking for exercise. But what happens inevitably is we end up talking. We talk to people we don't even know, but we meet them. And we would not have met them people if we would not have been out walking. So the social interaction aspect of this, and going back to the gym, if you're part of some type of gym membership, that community, I didn't realize, like when I first start, I'll just admit, I work out with the geriatric population. So I go early in the morning, and I realized really quick, this is a group that I'm actually being invited into now. People started talking to me, but they all know each other. They all do things outside of the gym. They all have this community, and it's such a wonderful thing. You're missing out on it if you're just sitting at home and you're isolating yourself and you're not getting up to move. So understand that the benefits, even if my wife is an introvert, but she walks around here and talks to people like she's not.
Wow.
But she wouldn't be standing in front of people talking, that's not her thing. But it's amazing the individual conversations you can have just because you're out doing a common activity with people. So that's the good. I would address the bad. Sometimes a typical week for people is they have long periods of sitting. That's not healthy for anything. It's not healthy for your obviously strength and endurance and physical aspects we're talking about. It's not good for your socialization. It's not good for your nutrition. Your food has to move in order to absorb and remove waste and all that. So long periods of sitting, not good. I put on here the forgotten, and I said that because we need to think about the intentional work we need to do for ourselves. Don't forget about the things that are important that you need to be maintaining for yourself. They tell us in management training, if you're not healthy, you're not taking care of yourself, you can't lead people. So don't forget about how important it is to take care of some of these aspects in your life and make these changes that you need to make. So the good, the bad, and the forgotten, and I won't mention the ugly because we've all seen that. It goes south really fast when we stop moving.
Absolutely. Okay, wonderful. Meg, what's a typical week for an older adult in your world?
Their weeks are very inconsistent. So some days they may sleep through lunch. Other days they may eat all 3 meals. So it just really varies for them. They rely a lot on convenience foods. So a lot of them, maybe if they're in a wheelchair, they're not able to stand over a stove or be able to open an oven or reach in. They're using a lot of microwavable foods. And so again, those are usually highly processed and just really quick, easy, like a TV dinner almost. A lot of frozen foods too, and limited variety in diet. I did an assessment on a gentleman last week, and pretty much all he'd eaten the past few days was white bread and beans. And just no vegetables, no fruit, a lot of soda, just very, very limited.
That's a shame. All right. Well, routines matter, and I think it's more than people often realize. Talk a little bit about what factors help older adults improve their routines and to build healthier habits into their lifestyle.
Absolutely. So support systems, I've kind of touched on that a little bit. We all need a support system. That could be family, that could be caregivers, that could be community programs, that could be friends, that could be your church. We all need a support system. So if we have people backing us and what happens when you have that and you start to improve? you become the backer. You become another person's inspiration and helps them motivate. Iron sharpens iron. I think the scriptures refer to this as. So the better the support system that you can quantify in your life and your routines, the better. I will divert a little bit here and go to some of my interview questions that so inspired me when I was preparing for this. One stated this: God inspires me to do my part to take care of my health. I love people. I look forward to being with friends and the ones I work out with. We all talk and share our lives. That's a great support system. Another interviewee said this: it makes us feel much better. See the wording there? They're not just talking about themselves. They see the benefits in other people's lives. Plus, we get a lot of mental attitude improvement from socialization with others. He cited a lady that's 94 that he works out with, and he said, every day that I see her in the gym, and they go 4 to 5 times a week, let me just say.
Oh, my
Which
goodness.
I was floored at how often
So
they
am I.
go there. I was expecting 2 to 3, but he said 4 to 5. He said, I hug her just for being there. She's 94. And so they inspire one another.
That's amazing.
So the support system, I think, is important. Another thing you need to consider is a safe environment for movement. We have many tools we try to go over with our participants at Senior TLC, and one of them includes the Senior Fall Prevention Home Checklist. And usually social work will go over this with them, or their home care coordinator nurse, and they'll talk about the different environments, the setup in their home. They may need therapy to come in and do a home assessment to recommend equipment, make modifications, dare I say, remove rugs. I know that's a touchy subject for some people. Looking at stairs, making sure there's handrails, making sure the floors are clean and not cluttered, that you have a clear path so that you prevent falls, making sure that your kitchen is easy accessible so that you can cook some of that good food that Meg's talking about safely. And just thinking about the whole arrangement. How do you get in and out of your house? Just being in therapy. Me and my wife is also, we met in college. She's also in physical therapy. We thought that well into our 20s when we were buying a house. This house has to be easily accessible. So, just things that that you need to think about to make sure that the environment that you're living in and working out in is safe. And then also just to encourage yourself and others to move forward, because truly movement is life.
Yes, it is. It's interesting you were talking about thinking about your living space when you were still young, because that's something my husband and I have also done. Is we've always chosen a place to live based on being on one level, not having to go up and down a lot of stairs and that sort of thing. We just never wanted to do that. So it has paid off now as we have moved on into our senior years and are thinking about all those things. All right, Meg, what do you have to say about routines and healthier habits?
I think it's having access to healthy foods now that it's starting to get a little bit warmer where we are. Farmers markets are starting to pick up, and
Yay.
I know, and I
Can't
know
wait.
a lot of farmers markets now are, if they're getting like food stamps or EBT, they may contribute some money and say, hey, if you can show us your card, we'll give you $20 for the farmer's market. That's free money essentially for you to spend on fresh fruits and vegetables that are locally grown. And that also gives you that interaction. You're outside, you're getting to interact with other people who maybe shop in the market, or to speak with the farmers about how it was grown, things like that. I went one year and I'd never seen a certain type of vegetable. I'm like, what is that? And it was a type of squash, but it was shaped like a sun. It was, and I went home and tried it. I'm like, this is so good, but I never would have known about it had I not seen it. And I think just social meals or getting to eat with others. I think now there are some restaurants that have a social table where it's just one big long table and you just sit down, and that kind of means you're welcome to others sitting and joining you. And if you're by yourself, that can be a little daunting to go and do, but you may get to sit with other people and maybe make a new friend and be able to go there all the time, and just kind of getting out of your comfort zone. And then education about nutrition. I think that's so important because I think there's so much misinformation out there on the internet
Absolutely.
by influencers or from people who don't have the proper education. And I love doctors. I have multiple doctors in my family, but they do not have the nutrition education. They get maybe 2 classes of nutrition throughout their medical degree. And so really dietitians are the experts on nutrition. We have to have a master's. We have to have license. Like we've gone through years and years of schooling. And so I think that's so important of getting your education from a credible source of not just someone who may be getting some money to put this out on the internet.
Right.
So I think that's really important. And obviously, I'm very passionate about it because
Yes,
I want
you are,
everyone
and
to
I'm
get
so glad.
healthy.
Absolutely, I'm very glad about that. It takes a team of people to keep us healthy, and we all need to recognize that. I want to look at a couple of things more closely. As you're aware, ACAP is all about offering insights to adult children of aging parents and other loved ones. In other words, caregiving. So how do caregivers of older adults offer their support and encourage their loved ones to participate in various activities that will keep them healthy and moving forward?
Gingerly. And I say that because as we all appreciate our independence, let's not forget that even though our loved ones, the ones we are caregiving for, the ones we're treating at Senior TLC, their autonomy is important to them, and it should be important to us. We hear sometimes a lot about role reversals, and I will hear stories sometimes of, I raised that young'un and now they're trying to tell me what to do, things like that. So I do think it does have to be approached with their autonomy in mind, because at the end of the day, they have to make the decisions if they're going to do it or not.
Right.
I just real briefly, I will say I had a really good friend that I was trying to help him with this habit, and he kept coming to me, and I gave him every resource I could. We talked about it, and months went into this, and finally one day, his name is Aaron. He asked me the same question he'd been asking. I said, you're going to have to talk to Aaron about that. Because he told me later that was so impactful to him, because he had to realize no matter how many resources people put in front of me, I have to make the decision.
Right.
And I think it's the same concept when we're trying to encourage our loved ones or the ones that we truly know can benefit from this. We have to be, sometimes sneaky about it and not so forthcoming, because sometimes it causes them to not want to do it, when they're feeling like they're made to do it. I know as a therapist, you're not going to get much out of someone, even if they need that therapy so bad, if you go at them sideways. You really have to kind of, a lot of them make it there. They have to decide if they want to do this exercise you're suggesting. You can talk about the benefits. You can connect them with resources. You can encourage them. But I think knowing that you are truly part of their support system for their decisions, I think is the best approach.
Right. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you just said. We think we know our parents, but the reality is that the parents that we have in older age are not the same people that we grew up with. Because we tend to think, sometimes you are out in society and you run into somebody you knew 30 years ago. They don't look the same. You're surprised at what they're into now. They do all kinds of different things. Their career paths are just incredible. And you tend to think of them as the people that you knew way back when, but they aren't, and our parents aren't either. We just don't have that separation of time because we're probably staying fairly well in lockstep with them over the years, but still they're changing, just as we change. So we really need to ask them, what do you want to do? What do you feel you can do? So, excellent points. Meg, how about you? How can caregivers help their parents?
I think getting them out and doing things. Maybe take them to a cooking class. Maybe if you cook them dinners, ask them for a change what they may want for dinner. To see if they can give you any ideas, or take them to the grocery store. I know we hear about it a lot with, oh, my kid's such a picky eater, okay, well then take them to the store, have them pick something out. Same thing with, our geriatric population. Take them to the store, let them pick out an item they want to do, and then cook together. Create a memory. And then sit down and try it. Maybe try something you've never cooked before, and you're like, this is either going to be really gross or we're going to make the best thing in the world.
Or say, how do you fix this? Because I've eaten it my whole life, but you've never shown me how.
Right. Exactly.
Good point.
My grandmother makes these lemon bars, and so I called her, and she was like, well, I don't have a recipe. I'm like, well, I need you to like mentally tell me what you do, and I have it written down in the notes app on my phone. And my sister asked for it today, and it's something that it can be passed down. Of just, everyone used to just cook without a cookbook, and you're like, how do I know how to do this?
Now, I have a hint about this. So when you're asking a parent or an older relative to show you how they make something that you've had your whole life, but they don't have it written down, they're going to put it in their hand, and they're going to say, about this much. And when they do that, you have your measuring cup or your measuring spoon ready, and you say, okay, put it in here.
Oh, that's
and
perfect.
then you know how much that is. So we have done this.
Okay.
We have done this in our family, and we have some great recipes that are handed down because we did that.
Yes.
With an older relative. So there you go.
Wow.
Good
So
hint.
that's just a couple ideas. And then I go and exercise during my lunch breaks at work. And so I'll see people walking with their parents around the track at the local YMCA. I mean, it can be even if you just pack a lunch and go sit outside on a park bench. Just kind of get them out of the house. And the sun and the fresh air can do so much. We're getting finally out of the winter months and the darkness, and our endorphins are coming back, and we're all a bit more happier now that we're having sunlight
Yes.
for a little bit longer, and foods are becoming lighter. We're not eating such hearty soups and things, and so you kind of feel a little bit better, and you're like, I have a little bit more energy, and you're not like, oh, I'm going to go take a nap now. So I think there's a lot of things that can go into it, but I think just having the family support, doing things together and creating memories can just make such a big change for them, because that's what I've seen a lot at Senior TLC is they just want to be included, and they want to feel like they still have a part in their family.
And I think that addresses a lot of what we see in depression. We don't realize what someone else is going through mentally sometimes. And if you think about how someone used to be so active and independent, like you said earlier, different when they were in their 30s and 40s raising you, and now they're in their 70s and 80s and 90s and struggling. So being a part of the things that Meg was talking about and that I was discussing earlier with them is so important as much as we can, because it also lessens their depression, which is very real, and we need to look at the signs of that and make sure is that a part of what's going on with them.
Well, these are all excellent ideas, and this has been a very helpful conversation for us today. I think what we're hearing is very clear in that while aging brings many changes in our lives, there's so much that we can do to support strength and mobility and independence along the way. For caregivers, just small observations and perhaps even smaller actions can lead to big improvements in your loved one's quality of life. Jason, Meg, thank you so very much for being with us today and giving us such good advice.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I want to thank you, our viewers and listeners, as well. If you found this episode helpful, please be sure to share it with a friend or a fellow caregiver, and visit ACAPcommunity.org for more free programs, resources, and supports. We have new ACAP chapters opening up this spring and summer in communities from coast to coast. So please be sure to check those out on our website to see if there's a chapter near you. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to click the like button to let us know this episode was helpful. If you'd like to hear more of our broadcast, please also click the subscribe button. We also want to say a thank you once again to Senior TLC, formerly known as Pace at Home in Newton, North Carolina, for sponsoring our monthly podcast, available in both video and audio formats. And to Every Age, our sustaining partner. You can access the video version on our YouTube channel at ACAPcommunity, and our audio version through the caregiver community on any platform where you listen to podcasts. Please join us again in May 2026 for our next episode. Until next time, be well. Bye for now.